Here's what's coming up on today's show.
You know, we talk to people all the time in their early 60s, late 50s, and things like that. That seems to be our sweet spot. And, you know, they say, well, my parents didn't seem to have that much tax. Well, guess what? That's because most of people in that age bracket, most of your parents didn't have an IRA.
Welcome to the How Money Works podcast with Craig and Jennifer Moser of Maestro Wealth Advisors, serving you throughout the Triad of North Carolina for more than 30 years.
Let's go through some things here where if you've got some of this stuff happening and you're a retiree or pre-retiree, hey, kudos, right? You're doing a good job. So, nice simple one. What a concept. You spend less than you make.
Who knew?
Americans struggle with
more
this
money to spend.
Right.
I think our parents told us to do that.
Yes, exactly. Well, who listens to their parents? Right?
Well, if you're still working and you have a budget and then you get a congratulations, you've had a promotion or you have a bonus or we're just going to give you a pay raise, that's good stuff. Does not mean you have to increase your lifestyle.
Well, come on, Craig.
It doesn't mean you cannot. But again, you're talking to someone that does financial planning. So the question is, do you need to do something with that money to get yourself in a better spot later on?
Other than buy a hot rod.
Free cash flow, It's like, do I save it and build up my cash reserve because I don't have enough in there? You know, there's a number and we can show you what it is. Am I behind on my retirement savings? Do I have something that I'm paying interest off on? And there's that debt. Do I need to work that off? And how quickly can I do it? Now I have free cash flow to do that. So don't necessarily spend more than you make. It's nice to have a cushion. You have to take that excess, that you have now and be sure that you put it back for that rainy day.
Yeah, the unknown, right? There's still things out there that could happen.
Never know.
Yep, that's for sure. Number two, understand the future tax implications of your savings. Jennifer kind of finished off the prior segment talking about Roth a little bit. Same
Right.
kind of conversation here. Many people go, man, I wish I'd have started Roth sooner.
You know, we talk to people all the time in their early 60s, late 50s, and things like that. That seems to be our sweet spot. And, they say, well, my parents didn't seem to have that much tax. Well, guess what? That's because most of people in that age bracket, most of your parents didn't have an IRA. And if they did, it wasn't much of one or a 401k. So I use our parents, Jennifer, because that's my role model. There's no IRA with your mom, right?
Nope.
And the same thing for my father.
Just
and you
pensions.
Go, why? Well, the reason why is it wasn't in existence then. It started really in the very early 80s. It didn't really catch on big until the mid 80s. And then guess what? People saved in these 401ks. They were able to deduct that money. And I guess, I don't know if the government was that smart or not, but now that all of us are starting to mature in mass and need the money from those accounts that have never had taxes taken out of them, all of a sudden it's like, holy cow.
I think it would be a real eye-opener for people to look at that pre-tax account, that IRA, that 401k, and say, okay, I'm looking at $1 million. Well, that $1 million's not all mine, and just carve off and say, psht, 25 or 33 or whatever percent. The rest is mine to spend. And I think that would be a real life-changing event.
Yeah, you're not a millionaire, right? You're more like a 700,000-aire,
Right.
Like
and then the problem with that is you don't know what taxes are going to be every year in retirement in 20, 30 years, right? You were talking about taxes being on sale. Looking back historically, as recently as what, the 80s? It was 70% is the max.
Let's say late 70s.
Late 70s.
Yeah.
The max percentage tax rate was 70%. And you're like, that will never happen to me. Well, go back and look at historical tax rates and see kind of where you might be at different income levels. It's an eye-opener.
Yeah, for sure.
And with $34 trillion in debt and they're continuing to borrow, I mean, you've got to be realistic with yourself and say, these folks are going to need my tax revenue because they don't make anything. They don't sell anything. They get it from you.
Yeah.
And that's when we build plans, we look at your taxable money. We look at your never taxed again money, which is your Roth, which I call it your most valuable asset. and then your pre-tax money, which, the government has a hand in every single dollar. So you really need to have all of those buckets. If you can not have the pre and have it moved over, that's even better. But if you can have different buckets, then as you are drawing your income in retirement, as you need to pay for that new car or the furnace or that new roof, you're not always having a taxable event. You can manage that tax line.
For sure. Great information there. And what about another sign of good financial health, guys? If you're married, like y'all, right?
Yeah.
Both you and your spouse know enough about the retirement plan to be able to manage it when something happens to the other. And I know this is something you guys definitely stress with folks when they come in. Is we had a lady on the show a while back who had a situation like that, right? Where it's like both people need to understand what's going on in the plan.
I find sometimes, I'd say 30% of the time, so that's a fairly high statistic, one of them's not interested.
Sure.
It's just boring. I don't like hearing about it. I don't understand it. Whatever that is, too bad. I mean, I hate to say it that way.
Or the dynamics in the household, too. One takes charge and doesn't really listen to the other one. That happens.
Yeah, I can't argue that.
Yeah.
That's true. But if you're not involved in your finances and you're thrusted into a situation to where all of a sudden you have to be fully immersed in it, that's a bad time to learn. That's not a good time, because not knowing what to do with your money, not understanding the projections out in the future of what you can successfully pull from your savings and investments, along with the other sources of income. What is the change? We'll do a death of a spouse. That's a good one. Somebody passes away, not a good one, but a good example. Somebody passes away and the other spouse is not involved. Well, all of a sudden you're trying to figure out, how do I do the Social Security thing? Is there any pension income for me? How much can I easily spend from my money that I have compiled back for retirement? What are the impacts of those distributions? And you just feel overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. And it's really not too late if you're in a situation like that and you're married and one spouse is taking charge and the other isn't. It's not too late to bring that non-engaged spouse along. We had a client who knew that they were having some health issues and knew that they're not going to be in the picture much longer. And I remember he bringing his wife to the table and basically introducing her to our team so she would feel comfortable.
Right.
She knew, what the plan was and why he chose us to be his advisor and partner through, the good and the bad. And that was a good trade-off, which is not bad, but it's better if we can, really be there for you all along the way, not just, at the emotional time. But
build it all together, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to know how to take the car engine apart in order to drive a car, right? So have a good working knowledge of how to operate the car, and that's what you need to do with your plan as well. Have a good operating knowledge of that. So, final one here, guys. Signs of a good financial health. You don't have to worry about your financial future because you got a good overall complete retirement strategy in place, right? You got an income plan, you got a taxation plan, all that good stuff.
Yep. So you could do this on a spreadsheet. So here's your DIY comment. I'm going to tell you where the mistakes are going to be, but here's what you can do. You can say, here's what will come in at different ages. Social Security will tell you when what they're going to pay you at 62, at 67, at 70, or any of those ages in between. They'll tell you what they're going to pay you. Mm-hmm. What you don't know is the inflation. Mm-hmm. What you don't know is the tax. You just don't know. Mm-hmm. The same thing with a pension. If I took a pension at say 60, here's what they'll pay me. If I wait till 65, they'll pay me more. Maybe I have a lump sum. You can do that math and come up with those cash flows. Again, what will it cost me to get those cash flows is something that's going to be a challenge. What is the impact of inflation? That's going to be a challenge. And then where am I going to place my money? I'll tell you where the first time you lose some money in an account, and I promise you it's going to happen. It will happen if you're invested. And that's because the stock market goes up and down, and sometimes the down is at the end of the year or something, and you don't see a positive return. If you do not understand that and you go shove it all in a CD or something, that short-term type of an account might work good for a year, might work good for 2 years. But when interest rates go back down, all of a sudden you're off track. There is typically a rate of return that you have to hit in order to get all of the return that you need to have a safe withdrawal rate. You hear it all the time, 4%. So take that number and kind of use that as your benchmark. That is not nailed it into the floor solid strategy, but it is something that you can use. And so if you have $1 million, you probably can pull 4% a year out of that. But if you inflate that number, it won't be 4% next year based on the original value. What's the value of the account? There's a lot of things to think about. And so as you're building out your retirement income plan, as you're building out the portfolio that's going to support that, you need to understand what's short term. You need to understand what's long term for growth, that, okay, that stuff's probably going to go up and down a little bit, but up is the primary part of it, because I'm buying corporations that are in the business of making money, and that's what I'm buying. And then in the middle part, who's going to write me a check? Who's going to give me interest? Who's going to give me a dividend? What real estate investment can I put my money in that's going to pay me a rental income so that I have cash flow and I'm not going after the principal value of my money? So all of these things combined with one another is how your portfolio should be built. Sometimes it's all in one account and you're saying, okay, well, it went up or down. But if you understood the mechanics of what's being built there, then you'll understand, this is my 3 to 5 year money. This is my 5 to 10 year money. This is my 1 to 2 year money. And you'll have it built out in such a way that the cash flow and the way that you use those dollars all work together, in a concert. That's what Maestro is all about.
Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. If you have any questions about what we've discussed, remember, you can get a complimentary financial review with the team at Maestro Wealth Advisors by calling 336-448-1086 or go online to howmoneyworksradio.com for other great resources and ways to reach the team. You can also check the show notes of today's episode for our contact information as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all the most popular apps. For Craig and Jennifer Moser, I'm Mark Killian. We'll talk to you next time on the How Money Works podcast.
Craig Moser is a financial advisor and certified financial planner. Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through Avantax Affiliated Insurance Agency.